Hi, today I would like to talk about the efficiency of healers in Paladins. Going through each champion, timestamps will be in the description. The main idea is to share my thoughts if each champion has the capability to stand as a healer, or if there are better choices than the current one that I'm showing. Hope you enjoy. Let's get started. I will be going in an alphabetical order, so I will start with Corvus. Right off the bat you have two options to choose from, Dark Gifts or Spreading Influence. I would say that Spreading Influence is a much better option as a talent, because Dark Gifts, not a lot of champions might need crowd control reduction and reload speed increase, except for example Betty, Dumbo, Dredge, whatever. The cooldown reduction is a very nice touch, but I think you shouldn't be keeping your Dark Gifts, your mark on one person. You should be switching it up very often in order to get the minus healing cooldown. Or, if this doesn't convince you, because you would say that regardless of the cooldown reduction you would switch it often between players, with Spreading Influence you can still grant plus one person either speed, lifesteal, or more importantly damage reduction. You might have a little bit of lower healing output on your marked targets, but you will grant both of them damage reduction or whatever that you have picked from your loadout. Or you can even grant damage reduction to 3 people. The original one you heal and the 2 marked targets. I like to use my marks that I heal one person who is marked but maybe far away and one person who is marked but close to me. That way I will get the extra cooldown reduction as well, which you couldn't really get if you would have only one mark. So I think it balances out the extra 20% minus that you will get to heal more often and more targets. With so many variables, I made a spreadsheet with all the health per second Corvus can put out. With Spreading Influence, if you have 2 different marked targets and you heal someone else, a 3rd target, and when there are only, well, of course there are 2 marked targets, but you heal one of those. And you can see with Chronos 1 and Chronos 3 the cooldowns on the heals and what kind of health per second do they yield to you. Of course any of these targets can be cauterized. This is just the paper form of how much health per second can you put out. And of course Dark Gifts works in a similar fashion. I just added a flat plus 75 to the end because the talent gives it to the marked target. But it still falls very much behind the Spreading Influence talent. Depending on how quickly you're switching your marks between your targets, you could either roll with Grand Design or New Resolve, or both if you really like both of them, but just about that in a minute. If you're switching not that often, then I could recommend Grand Design because your allies would get the buff from the beginning of the fight instead of waiting for them to drop below 50% or something to receive it. And when Cauterize kicks in, then just a pure shield on them would maybe help them more than you're trying to heal them. That's why I say that a New Resolve and an Abyssal Reflection with some points on it can help your allies a lot more than actually trying to out-heal them with Shadow Tribunal or even if you're a Madman Condemnation. Even with 3 points you get them some like an inbuilt haven, and with some shield you give them I think a much more and reliable source of survival chances than trying to heal them in Cauterize with your, I don't know, Cauterize 400s that are like 200s after 6 or 7 minutes already. About your own well-being, if you're really afraid from a flank that's in your opponent's team, you can either roll with Battle Ready and Magistrate's Might, or you can go the Price of Salvation or Grand Design. One of it, I would say, because the more you can help your team by chipping away HP from the opponent, the more you help them, obviously. And you should be able to put yourself back in the fight very, very quickly, not waiting all the time for the out of combat regeneration to kick in. Yeah, if you're a fan of this kind of stuff, like helping your allies out or whatever, you can put these 3 with reasonable points on them. Or if you care about yourself more, you can choose from this, and the rest is up to you. Alright, I think from healing perspective we are done with Corvus. I didn't want to dwell on projection, entropic breach or whatever. These are not parts of his healing abilities or capabilities. So let's just move on to Furia. With Furia we have two options again. We either go Cherish or Solar Blessing. Let's start with the more basic one, Cherish. It doesn't have any drawbacks and it gives us extra heal and extra range. Alright. Solar Blasting, on the other hand, is removing one of our defensive abilities if we want it to use as a healing tool. So make sure that the opponents cannot get to you that easily, either by having a good backline DPS or whatever that can hold up the opponent flanks like an off tank. I heard before that people say that, oh, let's use this with in conjunction with a Yaggorath in the team. The problem is that Yaggorath has no means of dropping off Cauterize other than moving away from enemy fire. She doesn't have any shields or whatever. Cauterize will be constantly on her, so after a while it will be very problematic to keep her alive. It works much better when you see your tanks popping their shields or whatever, you're just sending a beam quickly to their way and they will be on top of their HP in no time if they can catch it properly. There are some maps where you have to really decide which one of them would you like to play. For example, Timbermill, where the map is just huge and without Cherish you might have a hard time reaching your flanks to heal them. And with Cherish you might not have the healing capability to keep your point tank alive, since if someone has to contest then they will receive fire from every direction. They can even shoot behind their shields, whatever, because the map is very, let's say, complex. Here-wise I cannot really say much about the cards. Pick some that help you defend yourself, like Solar Flare, Conviction, or whether if you're rolling with Cherish. Or if you want some rats because you cannot heal people but you still want to shoot much faster, then you can put some Hollow Sight in. Whatever, it's really out of the scope of our current video. Just put whatever you feel like it's good for you. We have Light of Dawn again, that is similar to Corvus shield giving card. That might help a lot after a long fight. Or if someone is really in a picker and everybody else is on top HP, you can drop a heal on someone. And with high Cauterize, the shield they inherit from this card is very beneficial to them. About patching yourself up, you can use Burning Oath as you wish. I wouldn't really recommend Fire Siphon because it probably means that you are in contact with an opponent and Cauterize gets to this card very fast. And on the other hand, Burning Oath can be used safely to heal an ally and get some HP back to yourself as well. If you are using Solar Blessing, I would recommend to use this card, of course, on whatever points you might wish to use it. The problem is that, yes, of course, if you would use it on the maximum amount of points, there would be a bit of a waste because the cooldown and Chronos coming in. But who knows if you miss one or two orbs and then the effectiveness of that card will be already cut to around half of it. Anyway, you can put like 3-4 points on it, just because Chronos will come into play soon enough to help out with the Pyre Strike cooldown. Let's move on to Grohk. My big problem with Grohk is that his healing is not really up to par with some other healers. His healing, this 270 per 1 second, is very weak. You might get around 1600 health out of the totem during 6 seconds, but it's very stationary. You have to stay in one place in order to receive the healing from the totem. And also there aren't many instances where your whole team or most of your team is clumped up and your healing totems are doing wonders with their AoE healing, since their AoE is not that huge as well. Also the cooldown is very long on the totems. You might ramp up their numbers a little bit with Totemic Ward, which allows you to, let's say, drop 3 totems in one place, yielding a total of around 900 health per second. But that means that you won't have any other healing sources for the rest of your team if you waste them on, let's say, keeping the tank alive or whatever. So it's not really a great option in my eyes. Spirit's Domain is a better choice in my eyes because you can use your staff to heal not so severely wounded allies around walls or whatever, and you can use your staff to heal more critical targets. My problem with this talent is that you must aim with this talent, so there will be misses inevitably, and sometimes other targets can get between you and your original target who you like to heal or damage, and you are not able to receive the out of combat regeneration while you're shooting your allies to heal them. You might have to use your own totems to heal yourself. Since you're only focusing one target or two at a time, you might lose your spatial awareness. Where is everybody, where you should move in the meantime while you're healing someone. And the amount that you can heal through cards is very limited as well, since Gale only reduces one totem's cooldown when you use Ghost Walk. It doesn't use 2 or 3 totems cooldown, just one. Maybe Crackle on paper can help, since with that you can get another second of healing, which means another 270 or 300-ish health with the totem legendary, but still it's not the greatest option to opt for. So I think Grohk should remain mostly as a damage dealer, not as a healer. Let's move on to Grover. With the recent changes they have made to Rampant Blooming, Grover became a very potent healer. They also reworked Deep Roots, but it's not as potent as Rampant Blooming, so let's stay with that. You can use, for example, very harmonic loadouts where you can heal your teammates twice every 2 or 3 seconds. Or you can opt for loadouts where you will get either cooldown reduction or damage reduction, and also a huge Vine cooldown reduction when you use Crippling Throw, so you can use that twice. That means that you can put out 3 heals at once. So with Grovers there are a lot of possibilities. That might include Perennial, Unstoppable, because you're vining yourself into your teammates who might be in a fight. That means you're putting yourself in danger as well. Of course you can use Overgrowth on 2 points, let's say, because you want to vine away and also heal your teammates again if you get to a lower HP. Of course there is Chop Down, Fatalist pickup that can help you a lot with the cooldown management and also Adrenaline. Or maybe Rebound as well. I made a video about Grover recently as well, you can check that out as well. I will put a link in the description, but the loadouts shown there are maybe this, where you have every cooldown every 3 seconds or so, all of your abilities if you can hit your Crippling Throw. Or you might have pickup where you don't have to heavily invest with other cards. You can have your Vine Blossom, Cripple Vine setup, and also some Unstoppable for the mentioned, like get in the fight type of brawlings. Or with Adrenaline you can put a loadout like this in your arsenal as well, where you will have, of course, your most valuable asset is that if your team can get an elimination for you, then you can have all your cooldowns and heals back again. So really up to you with Grover, your imagination can run wild. He became a really potent healer with the renewed Rampant Blooming talent. Alright, let's move on to Io. Io's talents are just amazing, with both Lifelink, Goddess Blessing, and even Sacrifice, which allows herself to stay alive. Even if Lifelink can be prioritized to heal yourself as well, Sacrifice can also save your life big time. Goddess Blessing is a real asset when it comes to flanking with someone, for example, or just trying to escort them, give them speed, for example, or whatever, and try to save them from dying. So every of her talents are just really worthwhile. With Goddess Blessing, she's not really afraid to lose Luna, of course, who is a great part of her kit, but still with Lifelink and with Sacrifice you would love to see Luna still alive when you need her the most. As mentioned at Grohk, when I told you about the lock onto targets, Moonlight has a bit of a freedom when you are healing people. You don't have to lock onto them directly, and also you can look around a bit to be more aware of your surroundings. Io has a lot of cards to help herself out with the Moonlight regeneration. I think you all know these cards, I don't have to read them to you. But what about her self-reliance? Well, I think Restored Fate, for example, or Full Moon, and even Crescent can help her stay alive a bit more. If you're using Lifelink and the Fox heals you, if you stay next to it, and you have a somewhat high level Restored Fate, you can get yourself to max HP very quickly. Full Moon can also give you a shield if you're trying to flee from a flanker, and if Crescent would kick in, then you would get the effects of Full Moon again, which means that you would get, let's say with 4 points, 2 times 400 health, so you would get 800 health shield to protect you from further damage, and it only costs you altogether, let's say, 6 points. It all comes down to, of course, what do you even prefer. If you prefer some more healing capability with Moonwalk or whatever, or with Moonlight Garden to restore your Moonlight, it's up to you. I'm just mentioning these cards because I think they are great if you want to defend yourself, other than hiding behind Luna, of course. Now on to Jenos. With Jenos, of course, there is only one healing legendary luminary that comes to mind. The others are more damage focused, so we are just talking about luminary. There is a lot of room to play with your cooldowns and how to defend yourself. We have to keep in mind that Astra Mark's cooldown is 7 seconds and it lasts for 10 seconds. Of course, one of the greatest perks of Jenos that he can heal you through walls, so you don't have to play close to your team if you're confident in your own abilities to take down some flankers or whatever that might come your way, or if you have the mobility to flee them in time before they kill you. There are some cards that come to mind when you initially want to create a Jenos loadout, for example Retrograde, Astral Cycle, maybe Light Years, but I'm not really a fan of that. And also a ton of cards that might help you in self-defense or just help for your whole kit, for example Relativity, Inner Peace to keep other players off of you, Cosmic Barrier because you are taking damage when you're fleeing. Also there is Falling Star that might help you, reducing your cooldown, so repeating the whole process or getting some more heals out. You have to think about where would you like to spend your points. If you just put Retrograde and Astral Cycle on max, then you don't really leave yourself any real survival options. Because Void Grip's cooldown is 12 seconds, you can cut it in half if you put Inner Peace with max points in your loadout, and with Chronos it even helps you further to reduce it, which means that the opponent should invest in resilience if they want to catch you, if they are not, of course, someone who can break from your grip very easily. Resilience should be considered as a waste of their points. So if your team, let's say, has an Exterminate Furia already or something else that can CC a lot, then don't go for this, I would say, at least. Retrograde is a good option, and I would tell a little bit about Astral Cycle because this is a bit of an interesting card. So let's say that you just spam your marks all the time. You're not waiting to see who is on low HP or whatever, you just spam your marks on different targets. If you have no Astral Cycle, then with Chronos 1 your initial timer on your mark is 10 seconds and it goes down by 4.5 seconds each time you are trying to heal a new target, since without Chronos your original cooldown with Retrograde 5 is 5 seconds, and with Chronos 1 it becomes 4.5. So by the time you would heal some targets, you see that it's a minus, which means that the original target is not healed anymore when you reach the 4th target. This is the first target. And it is the same with Chronos 3 as well. If you have Astral Cycle 2, with Chronos 1 you're still in the negative values, but with Chronos 3 you can already see that by the time you get to the 4th target, the first target will still get the Luminaries buff, the extra healing, because you heal someone else who is not the heal target. And of course, for any misunderstanding, if you heal the same target, they both get the new heal and the talent heal as well. But I wanted to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. And if you have Astral Cycle of 5 with Chronos 1, it's still in the deficit, but with Chronos 3 it's still very much in the positive. But by the time it would get to the 5th target, it would be already a minus. So even with Astral Cycle 2, you can have a very little window where the the first target still receives the extra healing from the talent, because you have Astral Cycle in your loadout on level 2. So this is just a play with numbers. You can put it on 5 if you want, because you really are a man of healing and you want that extra 1 second of duration, so they receive additional 220 or a very little bit more of a healing during that 1.2 seconds of duration. But I was just thinking, like, I would like to have a little bit of self-sustain as well. So yeah, Jenos has really good cards to have some self-sustain, to keep opponents off of him, to reduce some cooldowns or whatever, and to help his allies. The only drawback is that his initial healing is not that strong, so that extra 220 is not that much. But imagine this, that he heals you 220 every 1 second. Yeah, it's a bit weaker than, let's say, Grohk Totem, but you can be anywhere on the map and you will still receive the extra bonus of healings you will get through Luminary every time he heals someone. And now on to Lillith. Lillith's only healing talent is Cursed Accord, so we're going to roll with that. Lillith has a very good potential to be a good healer because her swarm is very strong, and her Blood Hex has the potential to top up someone in just a second or so. Imagine that your flank is a Kogo, for example, and he's flanking someone and getting low on HP. He can dash and drop Cauterize, let's say, twice in a row, and in the meantime Blood Hex would almost stop his HP. But it's not really reliable because you don't know, you can't really calculate that, oh yes, I will just go in when it is near its full duration or whatever. Lillith has a healthy balance with Blood Hex and Swarm, because by the time she is casting her new Swarm ability, she gets back the HP that is required to cast it through Blood Hex on her allies. Multiple Swarm instances can stack in the sense of healing. In sense of damage, only different levels of Swarms can stack. While Blood Hex is a bit unreliable, but it still gets the job done to get back your own HP and to serve as a secondary support ability. But the main support ability, I would say, is Swarm if you are trying to control the battlefield's healing. If you, for whatever reason, would spam just level 1 Swarms, which would eat your HP away rather quickly, you can even buy some Veteran to have more HP to cast from, or buy some Kill to Heal, for example. You don't want to expose yourself, even though Life Rip would be somewhat of a good option as well, but you don't want to expose yourself to opponents, because any Cauterize that comes your way harms your ability in the long term to heal your allies. There is a card that I wouldn't recommend to use, which is Enriched Blood, since it reduces the duration by a lot, and your overall healing would be much lower with your Swarm if it would just disappear every 2 seconds or so. So I would say just go with Symbiotic Relationship and use Waning Moon to increase your chances to maintain your blood HP level when you're casting continuously. If you want with some points, you can use Sanguine Pact as well, because it helps you switching with Blood Hex. If their target would die too quickly, you wouldn't have to wait all the 4 seconds or something to put your mark on someone else, and it just costs you some 100 HPs to jump once, so it's alright. In terms of survivability, Blood Cannon is really good, because for that point, out of all the damages and flanks and whatever that have an HP card, this gives you the most out of it. Or you can put some points in Unholy Flight as well, because when you're trying to escape you would use your Death Wings anyway. At least it can give you some damage reduction as well. As a healer, I would avoid at all costs putting your mark on the opponents, because you get less HP back from them, and also it doesn't benefit you too much because it can reduce the blood cost of Death Wings, but it won't reduce the blood cost of your Swarm ability. And since Death Wings are very slow, they just move barely any faster than the normal movement speed. You can use some points in Wings of Terror as well if you would like to. Let's move on to Mal Dumba. I do not think that Dumba needs too much introduction because his healing capabilities are well known. Two of his talents are providing extra bonuses to his heals. Spirits Chosen is a nice and standard upgrade for your mending spirits, so nothing to it. It's just a good talent in general. Ripened Gourd is interesting because you usually don't use your gourd to damage your opponents, but mainly to heal your allies. Maybe if someone comes in your vicinity, one of their flanks or whatever, you might throw a gourd below yourself to heal yourself and try to damage him and as well, but in general it's a very great addition to your gourd that increases its healing potential to 650 per second. Heal-wise, of course, many gourds might be a very good option. If you have it on max, it almost cuts your gourd's cooldown in half, which is a really huge upgrade. Other than that, you have Feed the Spirits, for example, or if you want to help your allies a bit, you can use Swift Spirits. For a better navigation for yourself, you might use the Snake Pit, or for a better survivability, you can use Possession, or maybe Otherworldly. But Possession is the general idea on how to keep yourself alive better. There is not much to say about Dumba. His mending spirits are very strong and it has the opportunity to stack with itself, and Gourd is also very potent healing ability that might use to be heal yourself as well. And you have tons and tons of ways to make your life easier, to reduce your cooldowns, help yourself live longer, navigate between your allies better. Dumba is just a really great champion overall. Now, on to Pip. There are some bad and some good points to use Pip as a healer. First of all, his healing potions cooldown is very long. But with Mega Potion, he can heal you 2300 right off the bat. Even with a higher Cauterize, if you have some Rejuvenate, that might still be a lifesaver healing. Let's say there is around 75% of Cauterize, but you have maximum Rejuvenate, then there is still around 100 and 150 coming through, which as a flank or as a damage is near half your HP. And it gets even better, for example, if you have some inbuilt extra healing, for example the one that Moji has, or let's say Koga with the machine guns or whatever. Combat Medic is a really potent healing talent as well, because you can just throw a healing potion and shoot just once or twice at someone, which you would other way do anyway since you are looking at the given person, and it would almost give them the same benefit as throwing a mega potion on them. So even if you launch a healing potion and just a normal shot from your weapon to them, it will still heal them for 1750, similar to a mega potion. My only problem with talent is that you must shoot to keep others alive, which means that you have to resort to some sort of self-healing to keep yourself alive. With higher Chronos you can afford to roll discard on level 4 as well. If you can hit at least 2 targets, you will get back instantly your potion if you have Chronos 3. And even with a higher Cauterize, if a Mega Potion Pip can launch 2 heals on you, you will be saved no matter what. But keep in mind that he has a very long cooldown on his heals, and he might want to help others as well and not just you. But at least Pip can afford to heal you to full HP in a very short period of time when you drop that Cauterize off of yourself. Even for just a brief second you can be on full health already. I would really suggest to put Gift Giver in your loadouts on a higher level, somewhere between 3 or 5, because you need some self-sustenance if you're taking damage but you cannot heal yourself, or you don't want to heal yourself with your healing potion, since you want to heal someone else that is in trouble, you would still receive the full effect of it, or most of it. There are countless ways to regenerate HP for yourself, and even if you would like to take a damage turn with your self-sustenance, then you can put Moxie in your loadout with either some Life Rip or Refreshing Jog or Acumen to help yourself keep yourself alive, while you can use your potion to keep others alive. But Gift Giver is always a nice welcome to your own HP, if you can stay unharmed for the most of the time. If you're using Mega Potion, you can put Acrobat Streak in your loadout as well, but basically Gift Giver and Reload are some very nice cards that you can put your points on, and you can use whatever feels you make more comfortable, for example, giving yourself more healing, or for example, giving yourself some more ammo, because you don't want to reload with Combat Medic that often, or you're trying to reach out for more people in the vicinity. So Pip has a lot of cards that helps him to stay alive and help his allies stay alive as well for a longer time. So make sure that if you're playing a healer Pip, you have some self-sustain, because you would like to give your healing potion to your allies and not for yourself. And now on to Ray. Ray, I would say, is not a very good team healer. The main problem with her is that her chain heal's cooldown is not starting to count down until the animation finishes, and it have bounce back and forth between the people. And it cannot be reduced by Chronos even, I mean the bouncing time. It's a huge loss of healing in terms of time. Also, while it's somewhat predictable if you jump between the lower HP targets, it's still not a very reliable one to consistently heal out everybody. That's why I'm hesitating to play even this legendary and pick something else. She is more of a flank healer because she goes very well with anybody who is on a flank route. Her envelope grants them a huge advantage over their opponents, which can be done by either reducing the enemy's damage done with Spiritling or mitigating the damage received even further with the envelope. Or if you want to go raw on them heals, you can put magic in the blood, deft magics, some points and future generations in your loadout. All of them, if you just shuffle around with the links and you just spam your sigils on the opponents, everything heals to reduce the cooldown on your healing ability, which helps a lot. But usually I saw mostly damage raise. Alone she is weak, and I would say get someone who is a better healer than her and keep her as someone who just helps out the flanks with a damage talent of her choice. To my best knowledge what I could come up with, I even use maybe Restraint, because if you're using Envelope while the link is already on an enemy, you are not wasting anything because you prevent them from being healed. You can just pop your link, let's say, to everyone while you're in the lobby before the match starts, or the round, sorry. And then you can just switch your link or whatever to anybody who you see. And then it will greatly reduce the amount of cooldown on your abilities. That's the best healer Ray loadout I could come up with, but other than that she's better off as a damage dealer, with cards like this in her loadout. And now on to Seris. With Seris there are two talents that you can pick from if you wish to go healer, Mortar Reach or Agony. Mortar Reach are favored by many because it's an obvious buff by range and the healing ticks. The amount healed by the two talents are the same if played properly. You can say it's midway below the A. If you have 5 stacks with Agony as well, then you will receive the same effects. Almost. But the main difference between the two talents is that Agony is made in a way playable that it ignores some of the anti-healing, but it's made in a weird way because it's not only ignoring the anti-healing. Currently I think it will be fixed or whatever, it currently increases the healing you output for 10 seconds. So a mortar reach is the more safe option because it increases the range and the healing ticks are increased as well. Agony is a more dangerous playstyle because you have to expose yourself to the enemy to get those stacks of extra healing to make the same difference in healing as a normal mortar reach would do. But during the late game when the cauterize is really high, it really shines through that the difference is in the favor of agony. Because compared to the basic 100% heal, if you have a 90% cauterize, here you heal around 12% of your basic healing, and here you heal around 35% if you can get those stacks going. There are a lot of cards that are good for Seris. For example, if you're playing Agony, then you might consider this card to help you build up your stacks more often, to have them a more reliable source of extra healing. Of course, everybody loves Umbral Gate because the extra speed is always very much welcome, because you can navigate better through the battlefield, you can escape the opponents easier or whatever. You can also combo Fate to Black and Duskwalker if you want to have a very reliable source of escape tool if they would be really much up in your back. Also the very classic Veil or Bloodpact, they are both very much loved all around. Or if you don't want to reload, then you can go Spirit Leech or whatever. A bit of a problem for me with Seris is that she must complete the healing ritual in order for the cooldown to start ticking. It's not actually 1 second, it's like 1.5, but I have never seen a decimal in the cooldown descriptions, so just believe me, it's not 1, it's a bit more. Seris also must commit herself to healing just like Grohk or Io, so in the meantime while she is healing an ally, she cannot attack or cast anything else. One of her main strengths is that all allies within 50 units are healed as well, other than your main target, but it requires multiple targets to be at one place. So while at some comps Seris is a very good healer that are tend to stack together, at some places where you can just only heal one person at a time, there are other healers who shine much better than her. Of course, about healing herself out is not a big problem. For example, with Wickedness or Bloodpact, or to just run away, Veil is a very good option. Umbral Gate is a very good option. So Seris is like a very basic but a very good healer altogether. And now finally, Ying. With Ying, of course, you have only one option to go healer. Currently in the next patch they will remove the 1 second increase on the cooldown, hopefully, as they mentioned in the patch notes, so Ying will be even more powerful than now as a healer. There are some tricks that you should keep in mind as well. I would say Rewind on 1 point is a very good card because it spawns an illusion, which means that someone will get instantly healed when they are born anew. Also Carrion is a very good just for 1 point because the duration is made like that. With the basic duration they won't heal at the end, but if you have Carrion on level 1 only, at the very end they will heal once more again. Here you can see without the extra 1 second. She disappears, but with extra 1 second she healed once more. And just in general I would say Spring Room is a very good card as well, because not only because your clones can heal, but you can hide behind them if someone attacks you, and you can very much protect yourself if you just spam your clones. There is another trick as well that I just put here for fun. If you have Heal Illusion and Shatter cooldown with the healing loadout, then you can actually do this. And in the later stages of the match they will be affected by Cauterize, so it won't work as good as in the beginning, but still it's a very good and very scary like opening for the opponent flanks or whoever would try to kill you. to show them that you are not that easily being killed. But for the sake of God, please don't use this loadout. This is just a troll and just to show you that Ying is capable of doing this. Other than that, there are some cool cards that you can use with Ying, for example Encouragement, because your cooldowns are very low. I mean, at least the Illusion and the Shatter healing. Spring Forward to keep yourself alive for longer until you get back, for example, an Illusion cooldown or whatever. You can teleport to a safe spot. Or even Mesmerism. If you would run out of ammo and someone would come to flank you, you can put an Illusion down to get back some ammo to deal with them. So Ying is a very versatile healer as well. And that's all. These were all the healers. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask in the comments or whatever. Hope you got something out of this. Have an enjoyable day or night. Bye.